ever read a headline, and just felt there has to be more to it, that you want to get past the sort of surface level stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. To really understand what's behind the news.
Exactly. Well, that's what we're doing today. You sent us this really detailed CNN report. It's titled, How Gaza's Hospitals Became Battlegrounds. And we're going to dig into it.
It's a significant piece of work. It looks really closely at the damage, the destruction of hospitals in northern Gaza.
Right, specifically in those first 2 months of the war, so October 7th to December 7th, 2023.
And they didn't just glance at it. They used satellite images, hundreds of videos, verified ones, plus interviews. It's pretty comprehensive.
And the headline finding, I guess, is the scale, isn't it? They looked at 22 hospitals up there in the north.
And found that 20 of them were damaged or destroyed, just in that initial period.
Which is just staggering. It points to something systemic, not just, random incidents.
Definitely. And then you have the central tension, the core disagreement here.
Yeah. Israel saying Hamas operates from within and under these hospitals, using them for military purposes.
Which Hamas denies. And the IDF says it wasn't directly targeting the hospitals themselves.
So our kind of mission here for this deep dive is to really unpack the evidence CNN presents. What does it show about the damage to these absolutely essential places, and what's the context?
Okay, so maybe start with the big picture, the overall impact on healthcare.
Good idea. The report, well, it paints a really grim picture. Constant bombardment, power cuts, massive shortages.
It basically just crippled the system, didn't it? Pretty much every hospital in the north became non-operational.
Think about that. An entire region losing its medical capacity.
It's hard to even imagine. And those numbers, again, 20 out of 22 damaged or destroyed.
And the report gets specific, 14 were directly hit.
It also talks about the type of damage, which I found really telling.
You mean the craters?
Yeah, the satellite images showing craters near 11 hospitals, craters consistent with 2,000-pound bombs.
Which are huge. And the report mentions the lethal fragmentation radius, meaning even a near miss could cause massive damage.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just superficial damage, right? 2 hospitals were completely flattened.
Gone. Just gone. Pediatric hospitals, cancer centers, psychiatric facilities all forced to stop working.
So by December 7th, the end of the period they focus on, only 4 were even partially functioning. And none had surgical capacity.
And it got worse, didn't it? The WHO assessment later in December.
Yeah, by December 21st, the WHO said no hospitals were functioning in northern Gaza. 0.
Their description, injured people just waiting to die because they couldn't be moved. It's horrific.
Just awful.
Yeah.
Even by mid-January, only 6 were partially back online. It really shows the catastrophic impact. Not just incidents, but a system-wide collapse.
Okay, so to get a better handle on how this played out on the ground, the report zooms in on 2 specific hospitals.
Right, Al-Quds and Al-Shifa, the biggest and second biggest. And both were places Israel specifically mentioned regarding alleged Hamas activity.
Makes sense to focus there. Let's start with Al-Quds.
Okay, Al-Quds, operated by the Palestine Red Crescent Society, the PRCS.
The timeline there seems incredibly intense. It starts with an evacuation order from Israel on October 14th.
But the report stresses how impossible it was.
Yeah.
You had 500 patients ICU, babies in incubators.
Plus thousands of displaced people sheltering there, right? Something like 12,000.
Exactly. Women, children. Where could they possibly go safely amidst the fighting? It highlights that whole dilemma of evacuation orders in active conflict zones.
It really does. Then strikes start happening nearby. October 18th, 22nd.
Yeah, and the PRCS apparently found fragments from the October 22nd one. They believe they were likely from Israeli munitions.
Which raises questions about identifying the source of fire in these chaotic situations.
For sure. Then, October 29th, the strike hits really close, meters away.
There's footage from inside, isn't there? Showing blown out windows, smoke-filling rooms. Terrifying.
And this is where the narratives diverge sharply. The PRCS claimed these were deliberate strikes to force evacuation.
While the IDF said they'd given warnings, the hospital director was quoted saying there were no safe routes and ambulances were even being targeted.
Which adds another layer of complexity and danger that seems to escalate further.
Yes, November 2nd, reports of bullets hitting the hospital, injuring people, even reaching the upper floors.
Then more strikes, November 3rd, 4th, 5th. More damage.
And the IDF released that footage of a strike on a nearby building, claiming it was a Hamas weapons depot.
Right. CNN analyzed it, confirmed the location of that strike.
Yeah.
But their analysis also showed significant damage around that building and big craters very near the hospital itself.
So even if the intended target was separate, the proximity issue is stark. The potential for collateral damage seems huge.
Exactly. It shows how hard it is to contain the effects in such a dense urban area.
Then comes November 10th, a really bad incident in the ICU.
Yeah, 1 person killed, 28 injured from gunfire hitting the ICU, and the PRCS said continuous shelling was blocking aid, blocking evacuation.
Doctors operating by flashlight.
Yeah.
It's just unimaginable.
Then November 13th seems like a critical turning point for Al-Quds.
This is when the IDF released footage of armed men at the entrance.
Yes. Israel claimed their forces were fired upon and returned fire, killing around 21 people they called terrorists, and said civilians were seen leaving.
But the PRCS had a completely different story.
Completely. They denied any armed individuals were inside, and they released their own video, which appeared to show an Israeli tank firing directly at the hospital building.
So you have these starkly conflicting accounts, conflicting video evidence.
And shortly after that, Al-Quds just stopped operating. Hundreds fled on foot. A really chaotic, terrifying end to its operations during that period.
Okay, let's shift to Al-Shifa now, Gaza's largest hospital.
Right. And probably the most prominent focus of Israel's allegations, the Hamas command center underneath, used for hostages.
All claims denied by Hamas and hospital officials, we should reiterate.
Absolutely. But even before the direct hits intensified, Al-Shifa was already in deep trouble.
Overwhelmed with patients, right. The report mentions that.
Massively overwhelmed. And running on just one generator at one point. There was that surgeon warning it could become a mass grave without power.
Just highlights the incredible vulnerability even before things escalated further.
Then, November 3rd, the ambulance convoy incident.
Ah, yes. The convoy evacuating wounded people was hit. Right outside the hospital entrance, one of them.
Yeah, the report says 15 killed, 60 wounded. And the analysis pointed towards an Israeli Spike anti-tank missile.
The IDF claim was targeting a Hamas terrorist cell using the ambulance.
Which Hamas denied. So again, conflicting narratives about a really devastating event. It brings up that crucial principle of distinction in warfare, protecting medical transport, unless there's clear proof it's being used hostilely.
And meanwhile, Al-Shifa itself was filling up with displaced people.
Tens of thousands. Satellite images showed makeshift shelters popping up everywhere, courtyards, parking lots, people crammed inside hallways.
A place of last resort.
Then on November 10th, multiple strikes hit the complex itself, one in the courtyard.
Likely an illumination round, the report suggests. An Israeli one.
Seems so. Then hits on the maternity department, the outpatient clinic. Evidence pointed toward Israeli tank projectiles for some of that.
And casualties mounting, bodies piling up because it was too dangerous to move them.
Just grim. And the impact on the most vulnerable. Those premature babies having to be moved from incubators because the oxygen was running out.
Unthinkable. Then reports of the ICU and pediatric departments being hit too.
And they had to dig mass graves in the hospital courtyard itself.
The evacuation issue came up again here, didn't it? Israel saying corridors were open.
While doctors were saying it was a death sentence for their critical patients to move them.
Then came the raid, November 15th.
Right. Tanks surrounded the hospital. Reports of bulldozing nearby. A 30-minute warning given before IDF forces went in.
The IDF stated the operation aimed to minimize interference with medical care.
It's worth noting the U.S. intelligence assessment mentioned in the report, it did corroborate Hamas using Al-Shifa as a command hub.
But also said they'd mostly left before the raid happened.
Correct. After the raid, the IDF reported finding weapons rifles, ammo, military gear inside buildings. Staff were questioned, the director arrested.
And they showed that tunnel shaft on the grounds.
Yeah, claiming it led to an underground facility. Though the CNN report notes the evidence shown didn't definitively prove a command center under the hospital.
So interpretations still differ there. And the aftermath. Civilians fled. Those premature babies thankfully evacuated to Egypt later.
These two cases, Al-Quds and Al-Shifa, they really illustrate the sheer devastation, the complexity, the conflicting claims.
And the human suffering involved. It leads into the legal questions, doesn't it?
It does. The report touches on international humanitarian law, IHL, the basic rules of war.
Which clearly state hospitals are protected civilian sites. Attacking them is illegal.
Unless, and this is the exception, they're being used by armed groups for acts harmful to the enemy.
But even then, there are rules, right? Proportionality, warnings.
Exactly. Proportionality always applies. Is the military gain worth the civilian harm? Wounded and sick must always be protected. And warnings, Time for safe evacuation, those are required before an attack if the protected status is lost.
The ICRC, the Red Cross, they emphasize the attacker's responsibility to take precautions.
Right, which makes that quote from the IDF legal advisor in the report so striking.
The one saying proportionality is almost irrelevant.
Yeah, because they claim they haven't directly attacked hospitals except in very rare cases of immediate threat.
But that seems to clash directly with what some experts say, and perhaps with the scale of damage documented.
It does. The report includes an expert, a lecturer on laws of war, who states proportionality is always relevant when a military objective is hit.
And this expert suggested the level of destruction wasn't unavoidable collateral damage, but a
calculated choice. That's the phrase used. It really shows a fundamental disagreement on how these laws are being interpreted and applied here.
Okay, before we wrap up, maybe just quickly touch on how CNN actually did this investigation, the methodology.
Sure. They stress it was rigorous, analyzing, 45 satellite images.
Yeah, and around 400 verified videos, plus interviews.
And they brought in weapons experts to look at munition fragments, crater sizes, vehicle tracks, tried to piece together what happened from multiple angles.
It's that combination of evidence types, right? Satellite overview, ground-level video, expert analysis.
Exactly. That multi-layered approach gives weight to their main finding. 20 out of 22 hospitals damaged or destroyed, 14 hit directly in those first 2 months.
So wrapping this up, what this CNN report seems to provide is significant evidence, both visual and testimonial, of really widespread damage to northern Gaza's hospitals early in the war.
Definitely. And while Israel provides its justifications, citing Hamas's alleged use of these facilities,
those claims remain contested, and the impact, the outcome documented here, is the undeniable collapse of healthcare in that area.
Absolutely. We have to remember the human cost. Patients needing care, medical staff working under fire, displaced people seeking refuge. The consequences are just catastrophic.
It leaves so many difficult questions, doesn't it? The legal side, the ethical side.
The difficulty of verifying anything independently in that kind of situation.
And the long-term damage to Gaza's ability to provide healthcare is huge.
Which brings us to maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to ponder. How do we balance military needs with the absolute necessity of protecting civilians and civilian infrastructure, especially hospitals, in conflict?
What responsibility do different actors have to uphold those international laws, and what happens when those protections seem to just evaporate?
This deep dive into one report gives us a really sobering window into an incredibly complex and tragic situation. It really prompts us, I think, to keep seeking understanding and to engage critically with these vital global events.